Ella. We're at the top of the hour, but we only have 2 participants.
I can barely hear you, Barry.
Probably got my. See if I can turn up the audio.
Yeah, you sound very far away.
My volume is pretty high. I just turned it up all the way. Carson, can you hear me? Charles, how do I sound to you? So either they can't hear me or they're okay. I'll see if we can wait for another. Okay, there's Andy. Hello, Andy.
Barry, I'm not sure you're using the right microphone right now. Yeah, Lawrence also noticed that.
Okay, interesting. Hang on. I cannot find the control to adjust my audio settings on the Echo. Does anyone know where it is?
It's the button to the left of the exit button.
Ah,
there should be your picture in there.
Got it, thank you. Oh, interesting.
All right, how does this sound now?
Oh, there you go.
Much better.
For some reason, it decided to use my cell phone microphone instead of my laptop microphone. My cell phone is not even in the room with me.
Yeah,
Yeah, it sounded like that.
it's Bluetooth, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
but okay, so that's sorted out. We have a few more people, and it's 3 minutes after the hour, so I guess we should get started. Welcome to the CBOR interim call on February 18th. And Lawrence, you have the agenda. So first, let me see if, can we get somebody to help take notes in the hedge doc? Because we don't have our usual Marco today. I suck at it, but I will do my best here. All right, if others can help, please do. Lawrence, go ahead and take it away.
let me see. I guess I can upload the slides.
Yeah, let me pass slide control. Okay, go for it.
Okay, does that look all right?
I see the serialization slides.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. First, bit is just a status update. So the -03 was published. It had a lot of rework on the recommendations section based on some discussions over the last couple of meetings. I'm pretty happy with it now. There is a new section for the data model rule for big numbers. Well, the data model rule that was prompted by big numbers, where you tags can't modify the data model of other types or other tags without consent. And we agreed to put that in the document, even though I think it's not a good fit for the document. So it's there to be reviewed and looked at, and maybe it stays there. And then the third part was, go ahead, Karsten.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether you would wanted to take questions immediately.
Yeah,
so I think
sorry.
some of the problem that people seem to have is that you frame this as changing the data model. That may be a view that you can have at this problem, but really what tag 2 and 3 are doing is they are infringing on the space that meta tag 1 and 0 already provide by providing alternative serializations of these numbers. And that's our problem. And I think we should be a little bit more blunt here and just say new tags cannot provide alternative serializations of things you already have in the basic generic data model. And
So-
then it's much clearer that this is actually also something that belongs into this document.
Okay, the text may be closer to what you want there. Please read the text and comment on it on the list.
Will do.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I know that it. I know the text does say make the comment, or somewhere in there in the document it does make the comment that it is tags 2 and 3 are kind of imposing on the integer space. So okay, and then the third bit there was there's a section on when to use determinism, and that was rearranged a bit. I think it's clearer. Anders said he didn't understand it, and I went and looked at it again and put some subsections in, and I think it's better. So there's 7 open issues in GitHub. So consensus on the naming of ordinary serialization, and that's something I'd like to talk about today. Some questions about the appendices, particularly B and C. That's on the agenda to talk about today. Rohan has requested additional security considerations. And I don't think haven't, as of yesterday, I hadn't seen anything from him. And then there's test vectors, other simple things, renaming the control operator, deterministic encoding of tag 0. And then I have on the bottom, this is just something I'd like to do. I was looking at the O2 draft made a big example out of COSE about various the serializations used in COSE, and I was reviewing it, and I think the text can be improved. So the net of it here is that there's not really any serious writing left to do, and the number of open issues is actually difficult. Open issues is fairly small from my point of view. In terms of PRs, there's still Rowan has a general review PR that I haven't processed yet fully. The problem is when you do make 10 different changes in a PR, and you know you agree with some of them and you don't agree with others, it takes time to process, and we haven't gone back and forth with Rohan on it enough. It's better to produce, you know, smaller PRs so that you can process them one at a time. Any other? That's it for status. Anything? Comments on status? Okay. So the recommendation section, this is try to close that out. Kind of an update from last go around. It's I think in the 03 draft there are now subsections for a subsection for protocols and a subsection for libraries. So the recommendations are separated for protocols and for libraries. So the recommendation for framework protocols is say nothing, but it's also okay to specify a serialization. Previously, it wasn't said that it was okay to specify serialization. It was weakly implied, and now it's a lot more specific, and that was the outcome of the discussion, I think, last meeting or the one before that. And then for end-to-end protocols, it says you must specify serialization and recommends ordinary or deterministic. And the end-to-end protocols must guarantee interoperability. Karsten?
Yeah, so COSI needs to specify serialization for a very small part of itself. So it's important that protocols can do that. So COSI uses deterministic serialization just for generating signing inputs. So I think that could be put in there, that this is, you don't always do this wholesale to the protocol. You do this to specific parts of it.
Yes, that is that's very much in there. You should read the document.
Good. Yeah, I just was reacting to what you were saying. I read it and didn't have a big problem with it.
Yeah.
I do have a problem with the end-to-end part because I believe we never should recommend what is called ordinary serialization. Now, the problem is that we haven't really said what it means to recommend a serialization. So we can nail it down like we did in COSI for the signing inputs, or we can leave it open. But what does it mean to recommend a serialization?
So I don't recall the wording off the top of my head. The wording for libraries supporting ordinary serialization, there is specific wording in there. And it does say be able to decode it and make it the default for encode. So for me, I have to think here. Maybe recommend, does recommend for, I think it says recommend that you, it should, I should go look at the document, but sorry,
Yeah.
I don't remember the stuff off the top of my head, but.
I'm talking specifically about 212, which says the strategy most highly recommended is to normatively require ordinary serialization.
Yeah, okay, so there you go. That is what it says.
So what does that mean?
It says you must, a protocol says you must use ordinary serialization.
So what does it mean to use ordinary serialization? I'm sorry for playing the word game here, but I really need to understand what you're trying to say.
like it says for the library.
I'm not at the library section yet. I'm still at 2 and 2.
Okay, I know. What it means is that on decode, the protocol spec requires you to conformance with the protocol spec requires decoding ordinary serialization and requires sending only ordinary serialization on the encode side.
So yes, so you said the consumer needs to be able to decode ordinary serialization. What does it do when it gets general serialization, something that is not in ordinary serialization?
That's open. Depends on the. I mean, it can be open. It can be open, or it can be. It doesn't have to decode it. It's allowed to error out. It's allowed to accept it, or it's allowed to error out.
My comment here would be that is the serious interoperability problem waiting to happen, or we should not do that.
Why is it an interoperability problem?
Because you just opened up a world where it's not clear whether the recipient actually decodes that for you or not. That means that we will have sudden failures of interoperability because something did not do general decoding, or worse, thought it would be a service to the community to reject general serialization. And I think we need to be very clear about the fact whether the consumer is meant to reject a serialization we quote use quote or not. And that makes it very hard for me to comment on this section because I never know what you actually want to specify.
This is a more clear and strong requirement on serialization than just about anything else we have. So there is no requirement anywhere of any sort of must that general serialization be supported. So
Can you say that again? I just lost you.
There is no requirement in like 8949 that general serialization must be supported. There's also, and it's really common for most CBOR libraries and protocol implementations do not accept general serialization. It's very uncommon for implementations to support general serialization.
It's very common to support the definite length only subset. That's really what we should acknowledge in this document.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to go there with DLO. That is just there's no consensus around DLO. Okay, so I'm okay with the text. Karsten, please make your comments on the list and find a consensus. If you don't find a consensus, that's create a consensus around your comments. And my understanding is the consensus is around ordinary serialization. So
yeah, I'm not part of that consensus.
Yeah, I know,
so
right? So
you say that there is nothing in 18849 that says we use general serialization, which of course it isn't, because 18949 is about general serialization entirely. And so maybe you can read the third paragraph of 4.1, which ends with the words, full implementations of CBOR decoders are by definition variation tolerant. The distinction is only relevant if a constrained implementation of a CBOR decoder meets a variant encoder. And that
Yeah,
is
but
the basis from
sure.
which we are working. Okay.
But full implementations is that's just one sentence. It's not a formally defined thing. It's not a must. It's not commonly implemented.
Well, you're not reading the sentence right.
It's an impractical pipe dream.
It's a statement of fact. If you implement a CBOR decoder and don't stop short for some reason, you are by definition variation tolerant, because that's what CBOR is.
But then why are you going on about DLO? Then we don't need
Because
DLO.
we had convincing information, including every one of us who has implemented this stuff, that it is a relief for a decoder not to be able to have to deal with indefinite length encoding. Mostly for allocation requirements. I don't want to go into the details, but DLO actually is something where a decoder can save significant amounts of work and also offer a simpler API to the application than a full implementation. And that's something that we have learned since 2020, that this is really important. I mean, we kind of knew this all the time, but it really has come to the forefront of our minds.
Karsten, I wish you would stop using the word "we" when it's your opinion.
I don't think it's my own idea that definite length only is a useful shortcut for a decoder. I think that's, for instance, something that Rohan brought up. And I think other people said this by doing implementations that way. So Joe, for instance, has replaced his previous CBOR implementation, or is replacing his previous CBOR implementation with one that is very much not offering the benefits of doing indefinite length encoding at the API level. So he also seems to think that it simplified his implementation.
Oh, it's definitely true. I definitely agree with you. That's true.
Good.
I mean, I've absolutely done it myself. I mean, I went to the trouble to actually build a decoder interface that doesn't distinguish between definite and indefinite for maps and arrays. That was one of the most complicated things I wind up having to deal with, is to have a unified interface for both of those. So yeah, absolutely, it's very complicated.
Right, so we agree on that.
Right, which is why, or one of the primary reasons why ordinary serialization is, is what it is, and why it's recommended.
Yeah, but it's the good reason, and there are two bad reasons as well. And I would like to discuss these separately.
Yeah, no, chairs, actually, I think that is calling into question something else. I don't want to go down that path unless that's not the agenda item here. I think that's relitigating something we have consensus on. I think that needs to be, and I think you've basically talked about that on the mailing list for months and don't have consensus on it. So
yeah, so this is a process argument. I really would like to get the contents of this document right. And it's really difficult to discuss the recommendations if it's not clear what you actually are trying to say.
So is there text you can suggest in a PR, at least to get what you want to see in there started, Karsten?
Sure, I can do that.
That's probably the best approach there. And then we have something specific we can discuss and see if there's consensus on.
Good.
All right. So this is really not changed from previous. The recommendation for libraries is to use ordinary serialization as the default. That's on the end, and then they can also support deterministic, and also they may support deterministic in place of ordinary because the difference is small for some environments. Then so for protocol libraries, so for example, and this is just a summary, of course, of the text. It's not the definitive text. So, so the implementation of yeah, go ahead, Karsten.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I completely agree with what is on this slide, except for the third part of ordinary serialization, but that's a very small detail. Yes, it should be a recommendation on the quality of implementation scale for libraries to use preferred serialization and definite length only, unless there is a real reason to do something different. So I think we agree here on a recommendation for library implementers.
Yeah,
and
okay.
I think the library implementers also agree. So
Yeah.
I think we have pretty good consensus on having
Okay.
preferred plus DLO as a recommendation for library writers.
Okay. And then, framework, I was talking about, so question, I think you were talking about CBOR libraries. I'm not sure if you were talking about protocol libraries. So for example, a framework protocol library like a COSE library or a CWT library, with the noted exception of COSE having to use deterministic in some cases for some subparts. The recommendation is for COSE to use ordinary serialization. Are you in agreement with that, Karsten?
Yeah, as I said, I have a problem with the word use. This really needs to be factored out, and I know in the text it partially is, but I cannot answer your question because use has several meanings.
What do you want it to say?
Well, the CBOR library as a quality of implementation consideration.
Framework library, please. Framework protocol library.
Yes, you are right. So the framework protocol library should use a CBOR library that does that for it, or if it doesn't, it should specify, the library doesn't specify, it should implement definite length only and preferred serialization, which is 2/3 of your ordinary serialization.
Okay. So you prefer the word implement to use?
Well, specifically about the encoder, because the decoder doesn't get a choice. The decoder finds the serialization that the encoder has written.
But it still has to implement it or not. I mean, if it doesn't implement a serialization that's actually in use in what it's receiving, then it can't decode it. Right? So the question, if you're using implement there, what I hear you saying, Karsten, is that you want to separate the encoding from the decoding in the recommendations. Correct. Yeah.
Correct.
So the text for libraries does that.
Good. So we agree.
But I'm not sure about I'll check the text for protocol libraries and end-to-end libraries. Okay. So that's the thing to check on. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's maybe one little problem here, the last line on the slide. If the protocol does not say anything, you can still use ordinary serialization on the sender side, but you have to be prepared for general serialization, which means no constraints on the recipient side.
Okay. I mean, I'll check the text on that to be sure that's what's there is precise, but the problem with the end-to-end, if you have an end-to-end protocol and it doesn't specify a serialization, you're in an ambiguous interoperable state, and you are at the mercy of libraries. There's no requirements stated, there's only requirements implied.
Well, that's not how 8949 was written. And I point you to paragraph 3 of section 4.1 for a little bit more information about this. So if there are no constraints, there are no constraints. It's as simple as that. And another word for no constraints is general serialization. By calling no constraints a serialization, and we are confusing ourselves because it's not a specific serialization, it's just CBOR. So yes, I would recommend end-to-end protocol libraries to implement CBOR.
So I mean, I'm actually take a little time on this one, but the problem is that there's no musts about that. There's nothing that says, if you don't declare your implementation of CBOR partial, then you must implement it all. And there's no, it's not common practice. Most libraries do not implement it all. And there's also a lot of variation in terms of the data types and tags supported.
That's a separate issue.
Right, but the point is that there's not a clear statement in 8949 that you must be able to decode all of this, all the variations, serialization variations, and it's not common practice. And this is one of the things we're trying to clean up with this draft.
Well, yeah, so the paper situation, the situation on paper is that paragraph 3 of 4.1 of 8949 tells you, reminds you, actually it's not a new statement, it's just a statement of fact, that a full CBOR implementation requires the implementation to be variation tolerant. That's the word that 8949 uses. And yeah, so people were lazy implementing protocols. They tend to do that. And we see that in particular, they are not all implementing indefinite length decoding. And that's a problem. And that's a problem we should address. But I'm not aware of any interoperability problem that comes from not doing preferred serialization. And I sure would like to hear about such a situation if it exists. And I fear that we will get more problems by suddenly, after 12 years, putting in a requirement to make preferred serialization not just preferred, but prescribed, and suddenly senders. Yes, but as soon as there is an implementation that follows this recommendation by rejecting non-preferred serialization.
Whoa, what? Rejecting? No.
Good. So let's make that very, very clear. We are not rejecting non-preferred serialization. Except deterministic, of course.
Okay,
I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, so we can add some text that says the recommendation for ordinary serialization is that this be a minimum supported, and it's this is a minimum that you know, decoders in particular are encouraged to support more. Actually,
that doesn't solve the interoperability problem. So we should not introduce new interoperability problems. That's my #1 request here.
yeah, that
Please
doesn't make
let's not do
sense. That doesn't make sense to me. This is solving an interoperability problem that not creating a new one. Michael, I think one of the big issues here is that it's actually very difficult in some environments to have an API that can decode both definite and indefinite lengths of particular maps and arrays. Okay. All right. Again, I'd like to try to make this comments on the list and find consensus. Yeah, Michael, I don't understand your comment. I think your comment needs to be kind of more in the line of what text should be there.
Yeah, and I said I will provide a PR. It will probably take me a week, but I can do that.
Yeah, I think in general, we are in a stage where the beginning of most conversations should be a PR suggesting specific text. That will get us the farthest, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to discuss the name Preferred Plus instead of Ordinary. Last time we talked about the name, the consensus in the group in the meeting was mainstream. I mean, that could be fine. And there were some comments on the list and not big objections, but in the back and forth with Vadim, he suggested something like this. I think he was being sort of sarcastic, but that's okay. So I liked Preferred Plus a lot because it conveys the strong relationship to preferred. I mean, the difference between preferred and ordinary is that definite lengths are only is required, and that NAND payloads are disallowed. So the divergence from preferred is small. So just having the plus is a nice thing. I think most implementations of preferred are definite length only, so you get compatibility. So most preferred implementations will interoperate with Preferred Plus. It conveys that it's only a minor change to preferred, I think preferred is a good name in the first place because it conveys the broad, common, everyday use. So I'm enthusiastic about this. And also when I think about what happens inside my library, the names of things that it works nicely, much better than ordinary or mainstream or anything. Comments?
Yeah, I definitely can live with that. I suggested something different, but saying what it is probably an objective that is as good as saying what it is trying to be. So yeah, that the fact that this is putting together three things, preferred and two other things, I think it's good to expose that.
So you're okay with preferred plus instead of mainstream?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, anybody else have a comment on that? Ira said he liked it on the list. I will also run this by the list. Okay. Then the appendices. So this is my philosophy. Or philosophy I used to write the document. So main body is very direct and efficient for implementers. It's essential information only. It's the complete information for implementers. And the appendices are stuff that's optional to read. It's like background, rationale. It's really nice to have the background and rationale. I think it's really important. I think by separating the very normative stuff from the background and rationale, it actually gives you more room to be more detailed and expansive on the background and rationale. So that's why some of those appendices are fairly long and detailed, and so I really like the separation. This I mean, before I was, started writing drafts and like a few years ago, I was doing a lot of implementation work where I was not the author of the draft, and I found myself like highlighting drafts, like which of this text is background rationale stuff and which of this stuff is what I really need to care about. And just because I had to sort that out in my head to know what to implement. And so I have a pretty strong desire to keep them separate. And like I said, I was implementing a lot of stuff that I was not the author of, not the document. So I'm operating as just as a pure implementer. And that was like CMS and early Concise stuff and stuff like that. So that's why I have the separation up. Right. Why I really like the separation.
Yeah. So I agree with the previous slide.
Yeah.
I think that there's one data point that should be added. Many people actually judge the complexity of specifications by the total number of pages. So putting things into an appendix increases the conceptual weight of the specification, just for people who need to decide whether to implement this based on incomplete information. So again, I completely agree with what was on this previous slide, but we should try to be a little bit frugal with respect to what we put into an appendix. So fanning out appendixes to separate documents is also something that can be done.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed.
I'll also add that that background stuff and whatever can go into wikis and GitHub and other places besides RFCs. We can also put things in as drafts that now the drafts last forever and that sort of thing. So there are lots of options for publishing background information.
Okay. Did you have like wiki? When you mean wiki, what do you mean by that? Like what wiki pages?
I wasn't talking about anything in anything specific, but there are lots of places that CBOR information is currently published, and that can be referred to as background information. It can be added to. So,
Yeah.
I think some level of background information in the RFC itself is good. I agree with Karsten that too much can bog it down. So.
And then you make normative,
Informative.
informative reference to the wiki.
Correct.
So you publish it now, and then you make informative reference. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like an option for some things here. I'm not sure if there's anyone we want to take that upon, but and then one of my big reasons for putting a lot of work into those appendices, like the NAN stuff, is that it really took a long time to figure that stuff out in the back and forth on the mailing list. It took me a long time to understand a lot of that stuff, and it's really seems worth capturing for posterity.
Absolutely. I think all of that should be captured. It's just a question of where we put it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then I have this list of appendices and for discussion. So the main ones up for discussion were B and C. And Paul said take them out, and Rohan said make them part of the main document. I'm kind of neutral on all of that. I could go either way. But let's have maybe some discussion about B and C.
I sent a message about C to the mailing list like 20 minutes before the start of the meeting. You might not have seen it.
Yeah, no.
So this is, I think, a situation where the timelines are not in sync. We haven't really developed a lot of experience with material that is in Appendix C. So it probably would be good to have a document that is on a different timeline here.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Anybody else want to speak up for Appendix C before I take it out? Okay, I'll take it out the next go around. How about we got 10 minutes left? Does anything think any of these appendices are candidate for a wiki instead of in this document?
For instance, I think the NAN stuff would do well in a wiki. Maybe some of the big numbers stuff, things like that. And Michael just agreed on the big numbers stuff.
Yeah, I have the big number stuff in two. One of them is the explanation about how the big number tags, let's just say, I'll use the word affect the data model. I think that needs to stay, but the Appendix F is an implementation stuff. I think my preference is to keep it in there. The NAND stuff is probably the top of my list to move out, but I don't feel super compelled to do that.
All right. Well, that's all discussions that we can continue later. Right before we send it to the IESG, we can do cleanup on that and decide to move things out. Let's concentrate at the moment on the content of the normative portion.
Yeah, okay. But what I'll plan for the next draft is to remove Appendix C and leave everything else.
Okay, that's a start.
Okay, that's it for me then. So I'm going to run the Preferred Plus past the mailing list and see if that flies there, and remove Appendix C, and there's a few other things that were mentioned today, and probably an 04 draft in 2 weeks for the next meeting.
Okay, that will be our last call before IETF 125. We will be collecting agenda items for the 125 session in the meeting in 2 weeks, so we can flesh out the agenda, start filling that in the Hedge doc now. Karsten?
Yeah, just a request. We probably should agree on a good way to put where to put those wikis before we actually rip stuff out of the document and lose it. So let's have a quick discussion of that on the list. And Michael has a point here, so I didn't want to contradict him.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so we're done for now. Excellent. And now we're just going to go get garlic naan with leberwurst. That sounds like an odd combination. I'll give that a miss. See you all in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.